Yeah, shit's popping off. Terrorists are literally popping the domes off of cities. And Nadia is going around listening to them, and we did like a montage. It was a work montage of Nadia repairing devastated cities. Listening to Louis Armstrong records and Motown. The roofing crews moved from canyon to canyon, and their ex occupants went to work underneath, readying for the pump ups. At that point, Nadia turned her attention to other matters, programming toolmakers, starting robot linemen along the broken pipelines from Chasma Borealis. Who did all of this? She said with disgust, staring one night at the TV's image of burst water pipes. The question was torn out of her. In reality, she didn't want to know. She didn't want to think about the bigger picture, about anything but that pipeline there, broken on the dunes. But Yelly took her at her word and said, "It's hard to tell. The Terran news programs are all about Earth now. There's only an occasional clip from here, and they don't know what to make of it either. Apparently, the next few shuttles are bringing in UN troops who are supposed to restore order. But most of the news is about Earth. The Middle East war, the Black Sea, Africa, you name it. A lot of the Southern Club is bombing flag of convenience countries, and the Group of Seven has declared they're going to defend them. And there's a biological agent loose in Canada and Scandinavia. And maybe here too," Sasha interrupted. "Did you see that clip of Acheron? Something happened there. The windows of the habitat are all blown out. And the land underneath the fin is covered with these growths of God knows what. No one wants to get near enough to find out." Nadia closed her mind to their talk and concentrated on the problem of the pipeline. When she returned to real time, she found that every single robot she could find was in action, reconstituting the town. And the factories were busily pumping out more bulldozers, earth movers, dump trucks, backhoes, front loaders, steamrollers, framers, foundation diggers, welders, cement makers, plastic makers, roofers, everything. The system was at full pump. And there wasn't enough to occupy her anymore. And so she told the others she wanted to take off again. And Anne and Simon and Yelly and Sasha decided to accompany her. Angela and Sam had met friends in South Fosse and were going to stay. So the five climbed into their two planes and took off again. This was the way it would happen everywhere. Yelly asserted. Whenever members of the first 100 encountered each other, they would not separate. And that is where we left off last week. They headed in the two planes south toward Hellas, passing over Terena Mohol, next to passing over Terena Mohol, next to Hadriasha Patera. They landed briefly. The Mohole town was punctured and needed help to start the rebuilding. There were no robots on hand, but Nadia had found she could start an operation with as small a seed as her programs, a computer, and an air miner. That kind of spontaneous generation of machinery was another aspect of their power. It was slower, no doubt of that. Still, within a month, these three components together would have conjured obedient beasts out of the sand. First, the factories, then the assembly plants, then the construction robots themselves. Vehicles as big and articulated as a city block, doing their work in their absence. It was really confounding, their new power. And yet, all of it was as nothing in the face of human destructiveness. The 5 travelers flew from ruin to ruin, becoming numb to the damage and to the dead. Not that they were insensible to their own danger. After passing a number of wrecked planes in the Hellas Elysium flight corridor, they switched to night flights. These flights were more dangerous than day flights in many ways, but Yeli was more comfortable with their level of stealth. The 16Ds were nearly invisible to radar and would leave only the faintest traces on the most powerful tight-focus infrared detectors. All of them were willing to take the risk of that minute exposure. Nadia didn't care at all. She would have been happy to fly by day. She lived in the moment as much as she could. Her thoughts ran in circles as she kept trying to drag them back to the moment. Stunned by the waste of all that had been destroyed. She was becoming far distanced from her emotions. She only wanted to work. And Anne, some part of Nadia noticed, was worse. Of course, she must have been worried about Peter, and then all of the destruction as well. For her, it was not the structures, but the land itself, the floods, the mass wasting, the snow, the radiation. And she had no work to distract her. Her work would have been a study of the damage. And so she did nothing. This really is Sad Girl Book Club. Sometimes I pick titles and they're accidentally super relevant, but yeah, I'm feeling it. Her job, she had no work to distract her. Her work would have been the study of the damage. And so she did nothing, or tried to help Nadia when she could, moving around like an automaton. Day after day they worked at initiating the repair of one ruined structure or another. A bridge, a pipeline, a well, a power station, a piece, a town. They lived in what Yeli called Waldo World, ordering robots about as if they were slave masters or magicians or gods. And the machines went to work, trying to reverse the film of time and make broken things fly back together. With the luxury of haste, they could be sloppy, and it was incredible how fast they could initiate construction and then fly on. In the beginning was the word, Simon said wearily one evening, punching at his wrist pad. A bridge crane swung across the setting sun. And then they were off again. They started up containment and burial programs for 3 blown reactors. staying safely over the horizon and working by teleoperation. While watching the operations, Yelly sometimes switched channels and had a look at the news. Once, the shot was from orbit, a full disk shot of the Tharsis hemisphere, in daytime for all but the western limb. From that height, they could see no sign of the outflows, but the voiceover claimed they had occurred in all the old outflow channels that ran north from Marineris into Chryse, and the image jumped to a telescopic shot, which showed whitish-pink bands in that region. Canals at last, of a sort. Nadia snapped the TV back to their work. So much destroyed, so many people killed. People who might have lived 1,000 years. And of course, no word of Arcady. It had been 20 days now. People were saying he might have been forced into complete hiding to avoid being killed by a strike from orbit. But Nadia no longer believed this, except in moments of extreme desire and pain. The two emotions surging up through the obsessive work mode in a brand new mixture. A new feeling that she hated and feared. Desire causing pain, pain causing desire. A hot, fierce desire. That things not be as they were. How painful such a desire was. But if she worked hard enough, there was no time for it. No time to think or feel. They flew over the bridge spanning Harmachis Vallis on the eastern border of Hellas. They flew over the bridge. It was down. Repair robots were cached in cached. Repair robots were cached in end houses on all major bridges, and these could be adapted to total reconstruction of the spans, although they would be slow at it. The travelers got them going, and that evening, after finishing the last programs, they sat down to microwaved spaghetti in the plane's cabins. And Yelly turned on the Terran TV news channel. The Terran TV channel again. There was nothing but static and a snaking, destroyed image. He tried switching channels, but all the channels were the same. Dense, buzzing static. Have they blown up Earth too? Anne said. No, Yelly said. Someone's jamming it. The sun between us and it. These days, you would only have to interfere with a few relay satellites to cut contact. They stared glumly at the fizzing screen. In recent days, the local aerosynchronous communication satellites had been going down left and right. Shut down or sabotaged. It was impossible to say. Now, without the Terran news, they would really be in the dark. Sometimes they actually mean aerosynchronous, but like geosynchronous geosynchronous communication satellites would be satellites in orbit around Earth for communications. And I think one of the things that does not work in this book is areology and aerosynchronous. Because he means like Mars, like geo means Earth, and aereo would mean Mars for Aries. Yeah, it means around. Mariola. And I always get tripped up by it. And then one time I thought I was reading the word with like the root of Aries, and then it turned out it was aereo, as in like airplane. So now I have to read it really slowly every time. Even though that only happened once. Keeps me on my toes. Now, without the Terran news, they would really be in the dark. Surface-to-surface radio was limited indeed, given the tight horizons and the lack of an ionosphere. Not much more range than Walker intercoms, really. Not much more range than Walker intercoms, really. Excuse me. Hampy Dampy, thank you for subscribing for 8 months. Yelly tried a variety of stochastic resonance patterns to see if he could cut through the jamming. The signals were scrambled beyond repair. He gave up with a grunt, punched out a search program. The radio oscillated up and down through the hertz, gathering static and stopping at the occasional faint punctuation. Coded clicking. Irretrievable snatches of music. Ghost voices gabbling in unrecognizable languages. As if Yelly had succeeded where SETI had failed. And finally, now that it was pointless, gotten messages from the stars. Probably just stuff from the asteroid miners. In any case, incomprehensible, useless. They were alone on the face of Mars. 5 people in 2 small airplanes. It was a new and very peculiar sensation, which only became more acute in the days that followed, when it didn't go away. And they understood that they were going to have to proceed with all their TVs and radios blanked by white noise. It was an experience unique, not only in their Martian experience, but in their whole lives. And they quickly found that losing the electronic information net was like losing one of their senses. Nadia kept glancing down at her wrist pad, on which, until this breakdown, Arcady could have appeared any second. On which any of the first 100 might have showed up and declared themselves safe. And then she would look up from the little blank square at the land around her, suddenly so much bigger and wilder and emptier than it had ever been before. It was frightening, truly. Nothing but jagged rust hills as far as the eye could see. Even when flying in the airplanes at dawn and looking for one of the little landing strips marked on the map, which when spotted would resemble little tan pencils. Such a big world. And they were alone in it. Even navigation could no longer be taken for granted. No longer be left to the computers. They had to use road transponders and dead reckoning and visual fixes, peering down anxiously in the dawn twilight to spot the next airstrip in the wilderness. Once, it took them well into the morning to find a strip near Dow Vallis. After that, Yelly began to follow Peace, flying low through the night and watching the silvery ribbons snake below them through the starlight. Why did he fall? He literally didn't use the word pieced for like literally 6 chapters. And now that we're in the last 3 chapters, he will not stop saying pieced. Pieced just means like a track or like a road or like just like a track. Not necessarily a road, but we're just gonna have to get very used to the word pieced. Take a drink every time he says pieced. I think he said it 2 or 3 times just in tonight's reading. Uh-oh. Okay, flying low through the night and watching the silvery ribbon snake below them through the starlight. Checking oh god, I have to sneeze. Excuse me. I almost ripped the book in half. Beast. And I'm probably not saying it right. It's just terrible. Thank you, everybody. Watching the silvery ribbon snake below them through the starlight. Checking transponder signals against the map. Against the maps. And so they managed to fly down in the broad lowland of Hellas Basin, following the Piest to Low Point Lakefront. Then, in the horizontal red light and long shadows of sunrise, a sea of shattered ice. Oh no. Then, in the horizontal red light and long shadows of sunrise, a sea of shattered ice came over the horizon into view. It filled the whole western part of Hellas. A sea. The Piest they had been following ran right into ice. Okay, this game isn't safe anymore. Just take a sip, okay? The frequency is increasing. Oh, God. The blank that they had been following ran right into ice. The frozen shoreline was a jagged tangle of ice plates that were black or red or white or even blue or a rich jade green, all piled together as if a tidal wave had crushed Big Man's butterfly collection. Okay, that was not a sentence I was prepared for. Okay. I was not prepared for those words in that order. As if a tidal wave had crushed Big Man's butterfly collection and left it strewn over a barren beach. It does paint a picture, though. Big Man is like Paul Bunyan, but for Mars. He's like a mythical folklore hero for Martians. So it's as if his butterfly collection were smashed by a tidal wave and left it strewn over a barren beach. Beyond it, the frozen sea stretched right over the horizon. After many seconds' silence, Anne said, "They must have broken the Hellespontus aquifer. That was a really big one, and it would drain down to Low Point. So the Hellas Mohole must be flooded," Yeli said. "That's right. And the water at the bottom of it will heat up. Probably hot enough to keep the surface of the lake from freezing. Hard to say. The air is cold, but with the turbulence, there might be a clear spot. If not, then right under the surface, it'll be liquid for sure. There must be some strong convection currents, in fact. But the surface, Yeli said, "We'll see pretty soon. We're going to fly over it." "We should be landing," Nadia observed. "Well, we will when we can. Besides, things seem to be calming down a bit." "That's just a function of being cut off from the news." As it turned... Jesus. Cars on the road. "Besides, things do seem to be calming down a bit. That's just a function of being cut off from the news." As it turned out, they had to fly all the way across the lake and land on the other side. It was an eerie morning, flying low across a shattered surface, reminiscent of the Arctic Sea. Except here, the ice floes were frosting like an open freezer door. And they were colored across the whole spectrum. Heavy on the reds, of course, but this only made the occasional blues and greens and yellows stand out more vividly. The focal points of an immense, chaotic mosaic. I want to see the swimming hole. And there at its center, where, even flying as high as they were, the ice sea still extended to the horizon in every direction, there was an enormous steam cloud, rising thousands of meters into the air. Circling this cloud cautiously, they saw that the ice underneath it was broken into bergs and floes, floating tight-packed in roiling, steaming black water. The dirty bergs rotated, collided, turned turtle, and caused thick walls of red-black water to splash upward. When these walls fell back down, waves expanded out in concentric circles, bobbing all the bergs up and down as they passed. There was silence in the two planes as they stared down at this most un-Martian spectacle. Finally, after 2 mute circumnavigations of the steam column, they flew on westward over the shattered waste. "Sax must be loving the revolution," Nadia said as she had before, breaking the silence. "Do you think he's part of it?" "I doubt it," Anne said. "He probably wouldn't risk his Terran investment, nor an orderly progression to the project, or some kind of control. But I'm sure he's evaluating it in terms of how it affects the terraforming. Not who's dying or what gets wrecked, or who's taking over here. Just how it affects the project." "An interesting experiment," Nadia said. "But hard to model," Anne said. They both had to laugh. "But hard to model." All right, I'm going to get a refill on my drink in case he says "peaced" 5 more times. I mean, even one more would... I don't have any more drink, so I'll be right back. He's definitely going to say it again. Thank you, chat. Thank you, viewer. My passion is interior design. I feel so seen. Okay, I'm really enjoying reading all about the destruction of Mars and everybody trying to figure out who the imposter is. That's fun. Speak of the devil. They landed west of the New Sea. They landed west of the New Sea. Lakefront was drowned, and spent the day resting. And the next night, as they followed the Peast northwest toward Marineris, who's faking tasks? Seriously. As they followed the Peast northwest toward Marineris, they flew over a transponder that was blinking SOS in Morse code. They circled the transponder until dawn and landed on the Peast itself. God damn it. I'm not even gonna be able to read that. And landed on the Peast itself, just beyond a disabled rover. And next to it was Sax, in a walker, fiddling with the transponder to send his manual SOS. Sax climbed into their plane and slowly took off his helmet. Blinking and purse-mouthed, his usual bland self. Tired, but looking like the rat that ate the canary, as Anne said to Nadia later. He said little. He had been stuck on the Peast. What the fuck is a Peast? I'm pieced. In the rover for 3 days, unable to move. The Peast was dead. I don't know what a Peast is, and I'm too afraid to ask. Oh my god. The Peast was dead, and the rover had no... It's a track, right? Like, so the track was dead? Is like... It's like electric or something? I guess they did do electric tracks for rovers to, like, be more efficient. I don't know. The Peast was dead, and the rover had no emergency fuel. Lakefront had indeed drowned. I was leaving for Cairo, he said, to meet with Frank and Maya. Because they think it would help to have the whole first 100 together, to form some kind of authority to negotiate with the Unoma police and get them to stop. He had taken off and was in Hellespontus foothills when the Low Point Mohol's thermal cloud had suddenly turned yellow and plumed 20,000 meters into the sky. The first 99 ever. How could you say that? Oh my god. No, there will always be the first 100. I don't think John's the only one that's died. It's still the first 100. Oh my god. That's fucked up, man. The first 99, thanks to Frank. Yeah, okay. But they still refer to them as the first 100, even though there's probably only like 60 left. Maybe less. Aw, that like puts a whole different perspective on it, because I didn't think of that, honestly. And now it's been like 60 years or whatever. Or it's been like 30 years, so who knows what's happened to most of them. Yeah. None of the characters have mentioned that, really. That's so sad. I understand why they don't mention it. Yeah, there might be some autoerotic oopsies. Michael died eating dirt. Okay, they picked up Sax, blah blah blah. He had taken off and was in the Hellespontus foothills when the low point Mohol's thermal cloud had suddenly turned yellow and plumed 20,000 meters into the sky. It turned into a mushroom cloud, like a nuclear explosion, but with a smaller cap, he noted. The temperature gradient isn't so steep in our atmosphere. After that, he turned back and had gone to the edge of the basin to see some of the flooding. Actually, 101. Goddamn. I love this book club. After that, he had turned back and gone to the edge of the basin to see some of the flooding. The water running down the basin from the north had been black, but kept going white, icing over in big segments almost instantaneously, except around lakefront, where it had bubbled. Like water on the stove. Thermodynamics were pretty complex there for a while, but the water cooled the Mohole pretty fast, and... Shut up, Sax, Anne said. Sax lifted his eyebrows and went to work improving the plane's radio receiver. They flew on. 6 of them now. Sasha and Yeli, Anne and Simon, Nadia and Sax. 6 of the first 100, gathered together as if by magnetism. There was a lot to talk about that night, as they exchanged stories, information, rumors, speculations. But Sax could add little concrete to the overall picture. He had been cut off from the news just like everyone else. He had been cut off from the news just like they had. Again, Nadia shuddered, as if at a lost sense, realizing that this was a problem that wasn't going to go away. The next morning at sunrise, they landed at Bakuzin's airstrip, and they were met by a dozen people carrying police stun guns. This little crowd kept their gun barrels down, but escorted the 6, with very little ceremony, into the hangar inside the crater wall. There were more people in the hangar, and the crowd grew all the time. Eventually, there were about 50 of them, about 30 of them women. Why is that an important detail? They were perfectly polite, and when they discovered the travelers' identities, even friendly. We just have to make sure who we're dealing with, one of them said. a big woman with a strong Yorkshire accent. "And who are you?" Nadia asked boldly. "We're from Korolyov Prime," she said. "We escaped." They took the travelers into their dining hall and treated them to a big breakfast. When they were all seated, people took up magnesium jugs and reached across the table to pour their neighbors' apple juice. And their neighbors did likewise, until everyone was served. Then, over pancakes, the two groups exchanged stories. The Bakusin crowd had escaped from Korolyov Prime in the first day of the revolt, and had made their way this far south, with plans to go all the way down to the southern polar region. "That's a big rebel location," the Yorkshire woman, who it turned out was really Finnish, told them. There are these stupendous bench terraces with overhangs, you see. So in effect, they're these long, open-sided caves, and a couple clicks long most of the time, and quite wide, really. Perfect for staying out of satellite view, but having a bit of air. Kind of like a Cro-Magnon cliff dweller life they're setting up down there. Lovely, really. Apparently, these long caves had been famous in Korolyov, and a lot of the prisoners had agreed to rendezvous there, if a breakout ever occurred. "So, are you with Arkady?" Nadia asked. "Who?" It turned out they were followers of the biologist Schnelling, who, from the sound of it, had been some kind of a red mystic, held in Korolyov with them, where he had died a few years before. He had given wrist lectures that had been very popular on Tharsis, and after his incarceration, many of the prisoners in Korolyov had become his students. Many of the prisoners in Korolyov had become his students. Apparently, he taught them a kind of Martian communalism. He taught them a kind of Martian communalism based on principles of the local biochemistry. The group at Bakusin wasn't very clear about it, but now they were out and hoping to contact other rebel forces. They had succeeded in establishing contact with a stealth satellite programmed to operate in directed microbursts. They had also managed, briefly, to monitor a channel being used by security forces on Phobos. So they had a little news. Phobos, they said, was being used as a surveillance and attack station by the transnational and Unoma police forces. Holy shit. Arkady is rolling over in his grave. He would be so pieced. Thank you. It was being used as a surveillance and attack station by transnational and Unoma police forces, recently arrived on the latest continuous shuttle. These same forces had control of the elevator, of Pavonis Mons, and of most of the rest of Tharsis. The Olympus Mons Observatory had rebelled, but been firestormed from orbit. The transnational security forces had occupied most of the Great Escarpment, effectively cutting the planet in two. And the war on Earth appeared to be continuing, although they had the impression that it was hottest in Africa, Spain, and the US-Mexican border. Okay, I have to pee. I'll be right back.